Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to give this as the 1-minute warning, and in just a minute we'll call the Energy Subcommittee of Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications to order. So sit as you like. Chairman Parsons is here. If he doesn't object, we're out of seats in the back, Mr. Chairman. We've got our committee here. Do you wouldn't object if the people that are standing in the back can sit in the chairs there, would you? Y'all feel free to come on in and just from the back forward fill in those chairs in case any legislative members want to come and join us. We'll leave a little room for them up front, but please make yourself comfortable. Make yourself comfortable. I will say this, we have to be out of this room by 9 a.m. in the morning. Okay, we've been about that 1 minute, so I will go ahead and call the Energy Subcommittee of the House Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications to order. We have for a hearing only this afternoon HB 1152 LC 3657 55S. That is the only item we have on the agenda, and if there's no comment, question, or addition, we'll move forward and adopt that as our agenda without objection. That is our agenda. I remind everybody, and I'm going to do the same myself, if you have an electronic device, turn that thing on silent or vibrate, and we'll go ahead and get started this afternoon. I want to thank all the members for being here. I do want to take a moment and tell everybody I appreciate people being here. This is President's Day, our founding president, among others, that we celebrate today, and I don't take that lightly. This was just business that we had to complete this afternoon, so I appreciate all of those who have come in on an otherwise holiday so that we could move along with the people's business. So without further ado, we have a sign-up sheet we'll leave out while Chair Lady Camp presents her proposition, at which time we'll pick that up. Our goal is to let everybody to speak to the item, give everybody the opportunity to speak, give everyone the opportunity to speak to the item that wishes to do so. With that, Chairman Camp, come from your seat or up there, whichever one makes you feel comfortable. She chooses podium number 1.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Tell us about your process. HB 1152 LC 3657 55S.
Correct. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for coming in today. And it looks like we have a packed house coming in today, so thank all of you for joining us as well. My bill is, again, HB 1152, and it's LC 3657 55S. And this bill simply creates a base platform for community solar providers to operate. The Georgia Public Service Commission, let me change hats, will decide the specifics of the program through rulemaking process. It creates a viable market for community solar for landowners, local governments, residents, churches, nonprofits. And it provides stable income for Georgia landowners who lease their land to host community solar installments, while they continue to operate agribusiness. Energy customers can aggregate demand from multiple locations and subscribe to an off-site solar facility 6 megawatts or under in size, and it requires any fees imposed on solar customers to be non-discriminatory and based on actual cost of providing services. So this bill, of course, is multiple pages long, and it covers a variety of different things, but the description I just gave is pretty much an overview of. And I have several people here today, if the chair would so allow me to bring up to speak some further details on the bill.
Absolutely. As part of your presentation, you're welcome to tell us who you'd like to have up there.
Sure. Elizabeth Van Holt with Community Solar, Steve Butler, and Bob Sherrier with SELC. So if you would come up, and we'll just let you guys kind of in tandem talk about aspects of the bill.
Yes, Chair Cam, I'm just going to leave this as your presentation, so I'll let you if they just identify themselves when they come to the microphone, I'll give
All
you
right. Bob Shearer.
latitude.
Thank you, Representative, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Steve Butler, and I represent Georgia SEIA. We're roughly 200 companies in the state and about 5,000 employees representing the community solar industry. We presented this bill the other day. We went over a lot of things you're going to hear again. Just a couple of things I would like to mention as far as everybody to consider. One, this bill is not net metering. It is a bill credit, and there's a lot of confusion about that in the hallways. Secondly, they're going to talk about cost shifting, and I believe Bob Shearer will talk a little bit more about how solar impacts the overall energy mix and how we benefit the consumer. And lastly, we do want to mention that this is not deregulation. It'll be a 100% regulated market in which we'll be operating. And more importantly, this is not a mandate. This is merely an option for the PSC to consider to help with an energy crisis that's been clearly defined. The community solar industry here in Georgia has had a very positive impact, and we've had very successful partnerships with Georgia Power and other providers. There's currently distributed generation projects in over 80 counties that have benefited Georgia by providing solar power below avoided cost. And I think the last thing to remember is that anything that does happen as far as a rulemaking process would be decided with the PSC and Georgia Power. They would decide the rules of the program, the cost, the price, and the rates that are set. That has nothing to do with our end of it. What we do produce is some of the cheapest energy available in the country. So we appreciate the opportunity to talk more about the bill, and I will let Bob Shearer come, or Elizabeth Van Holt from Coalition for Community Solar Access.
Shirley Kemp, I'm going to let them go with the bat in order and assume, unless you object, you're okay with that. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Elizabeth Van Holt from the Coalition for Community Solar Access. Thank you for giving us the time here today. You met one of my colleagues in the last committee, so there is a different person, and we are here to talk about community solar. So really quick, just to back up, I am the director of new markets, and so my focus is bringing community solar into new states, new unopened states, new markets. Of that, we represent 120 companies that have invested $10 billion in private dollars to infrastructure. Let me say that again. $10 billion of private money into infrastructure to help with electric grid. And we have built 7 gigawatts of power generation in the United States today in community solar. So this is not a new concept that we are first bringing to Georgia. This is not a new concept that we are bringing into the electricity market. This is something we have invested heavily in. We are in 20 states currently, and again, have 7 gigawatts of power. I just wanted to clarify that. I had an interesting conversation earlier that said, oh, is this the first time this scheme is coming to Georgia? And so I just wanted to kind of address that here head on. As for that, we're here to voice support of House Bill 1152 because it's a pro-jobs, pro-development bill. It is, let me be clear, it is an opportunity for ratepayers to lower their bills. That's what the legislation is. It's simply the opportunity. It is not a mandate. It is not a requirement. There is nothing in here other than the choice that a ratepayer has to lower their bill here in Georgia. But before I dive into what community solar is and why it's important, I want to kind of little bit talk about solar energy and then work our way down into what community solar is. According to EIA, Georgia has the highest potential for solar energy production in the United States. Writ large, it is the #1 opportunity for Georgia to be absolutely energy independent, not importing 1/6 of your energy as you currently are today, but absolutely being an energy exporter instead of an importer. And so we've identified the source of energy that's the option. Why is that important? Because you have no crude oil production, you have no natural gas providers providing reserves or production, no coal mines, and so solar energy becomes one of those opportunities for advancement and growth and long-term stability for your energy production here in Georgia. So the question becomes is, since we know and we've identified that solar is the opportunity, then the question is what kind of solar? And so when you look at that, you already know that in Georgia, you have 4.1 megawatts of utility scale solar currently in the books, according to EIA in 2022. What does that mean? It's a really big number, right? Of that, 12 of the projects are over 100 acres. Again, really big numbers. What does that mean? Over 20,000 acres of land is now utility scale solar. That's what that means. Over 20,000 acres of land are utility scale solar. And why do I kind of repeat this and why do I make that important? Because community solar is the opportunity to harness the power of solar energy here in Georgia, but on a small scale piece of land. Singular landowner, not multiple landowners. We're talking about 25 to 30 acres. We lease the land. We don't purchase the land. It stays in the ownership of the landowner. And so it gives you a choice on how to broaden and diversify your solar energy production in the state of Georgia. There's a space and place for everything. There's a space for utility and there's a space for community, just like there's a space for rooftop. There's a space and a place, but the biggest takeaway about what community solar brings to the energy market here in Georgia is that we are smaller, we are singularly focused on a single landowner parcel, we lease the land, and again, we are capped at 6 megawatts. I don't want to go into a lot of the detail. I know that you guys talked about it quite a bit in the last committee, so I apologize. I'm trying not to rehash some of the things that you already discussed when I wasn't here. But kind of going on here, Georgia needs to allow the option for community solar, and that's the bill that you have before here. So quickly, what are the benefits that community solar brings? Sorry, this is a really big room and I'm loving it, but I can also tell some folks who don't love me out there, so I will try to speak over here. Community solar, it helps improve electric reliability. And I know this is a big topic. It's a topic I talk about in many states every single day for this job. This is not a conversation unique to Georgia. I almost said Iowa, sorry, that's tomorrow. And what I mean by that is reliability, and we need energy independence and security to continue to be the forefront of your grid system. That has always been a desire here in Georgia. That is one of the benefits of having the regulated market that you have, is because you have such a good system to make sure that the utilities know the power that they need and they protect the ratepayers, who fundamentally everyone here is here for. We're here for the ratepayers. And we help increase that reliability by dispersing the distributed generation facilities along the grid. So think about like a bridge. From the peaker plant to the end user, we're along that in small pieces to help strengthen the grid. We're partnering with your current utility here to be able to provide a little bit more support and a little bit more comfort so that if there is an unfortunate situation, the whole line doesn't go down, a piece of the line goes down. And again, we're here for the ratepayers, and we want to bring them reliability into their grid. But not only do we have reliability, we also have cost savings. And I know this is a big conversation. I've heard it a lot. A lot of people want to know if there's a guarantee. They want to know how it works. We're happy to get into more of the detail here. Again, being somewhat mindful of time, and Bob still has to talk. Sorry, I do love a good microphone. But that being said, we on average through the 20 states that we exist in today, save between 10 and 20% to the ratepayer. Again, let me say that again. We are in 20 states, and we currently save between 10 and 20% to the ratepayer. We have a different business model. We have different overhead expenses than other folks do. And so because of that, we are allowed to pass that savings on to our subscribers. And finally, the last one I'll talk about, and I could talk about a lot more, is the jobs that we create. And jobs meaning that when we are building these projects, for every megawatt of project that community solar builds, we bring 15.5 jobs. For every megawatt. These are good paying trade jobs. These are good construction jobs, good engineering jobs, jobs that are here in Georgia that will have a space and a place to continue to grow and continue to be. So we aren't taking job from one energy market to another. We're continuing to feed the need for more projects so that people can continue to work in those hard-paying working jobs. So with that, I will wrap up. We've talked about what community solar is. We've talked about the benefits of community solar, how we improve the electricity and the reliability. We create choice for cost savings. Again, let me say that we create choice. It's not a mandate. Ratepayers have the options. They have the option to sign up, and then they have the option to cancel. Again, we create the choice and we create the jobs. So with that, I will ask for your support of House Bill 1152 and pass it on to my colleague for the last speech.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Bob Sherrier. I'm an attorney at the Southern Environmental Law Center. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan environmental law firm that's based in the South, and I focus on Georgia energy policy right here in Atlanta. We support this bill for a lot of reasons, but I am up here right now to sort of walk through some key provisions and language in the bill in front of you. And so I would like to start on line 37, going over onto page 3, and that's the definition of a community solar facility. This is what we're talking about under this bill. There are limitations. It can only be up to 6 megawatts. It can be smaller. It's got to be Georgia Power's territory. And if you look on lines 42 through 44, in response to some feedback and concerns that we heard, we added language that prevents multiple community solar facilities from being in close proximity and, functionally acting like a utility scale site. And so that section D there protects against that. If you turn the page onto lines 75 through 81, there's kind of 2 key pieces here. This explains how it works. The community solar developer signs people up, subscribes people, sends that information to Georgia Power, who then provides the appropriate bill credits onto the bills. On line 75, you see that is where there's the carve out for the Territorial Act. That's in here because the act of selling subscriptions is arguably the retail sale of electricity under the Territorial Act, and so this just clarifies that community solar is permitted. Going down to lines 85 through 89, this is where the Public Service Commission would set the bill credit amount, and it differs by class. And this would be set after an evidentiary hearing where Georgia Power, community solar developers, other interested parties can stand up and present evidence on what the appropriate bill credit amount should be in this case. And I want to be clear that if the Commission and Georgia Power set the right credit here, there will be no cost shift between subscribers and non-subscribers. That's what that process is designed to determine. If you flip the page onto lines 96 through 105, here's the second protection against cost shift. It says that fees can be imposed if Georgia Power shows with evidence at a public hearing that there is some amount of cost shift that arises because of this program, that they can impose fees only on the subscribers and not on everybody else to recover the actual cost that they show in that hearing. At the bottom of that page, lines 110 and through the next couple sections has to do with the interconnection process, and it's designed to make sure that these facilities are treated fairly by the power company. And this interconnection process is a series of studies and other efforts that protect the reliability, the integrity, the safety of the grid. You can't just plug one of these in. You have to get approval, and the community solar project has to pay for those costs. On page 7, lines 150 through 158. This provides for consumer protection. It's important, and it's been a topic of conversation in this state. The bill gives explicit and broad authority to the Public Service Commission to set rules and regulations to protect Georgia consumers who are subscribers, who might be subscribers, at all stages of the process, to ensure that nobody is confused by this program and that nobody is misled in the sales process. Finally, lines 159 through 162. This is the heart of it. It ensures that people save money on their bills when they sign up for community solar credits. And I'll leave it there, and I'm happy to answer any questions of the committee. Thank you.
Committee have any questions? I'm going to assume Chairman Kemp will, if there's a question, it'll be for you or for one of the four. Subcommittee have any questions? Punch a button for me so I can turn your mic on. We don't have an 83. Number 5, try that.
Is it on? Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Camp, I'd really like to address my question to the gentleman that just testified. You touched on the Territorial Act. I believe that you said around line 75 or?
Yes, sir.
So, and my question is, would you're supportive of this? Is it applicable to only one power provider, it's my understanding? Would you be supportive of that if it included all of the players that are currently separated by the Territorial Act, adding in the EMCs and MEAG? Would you support it also equally at that point?
I would be happy to have that conversation. It would take a lot of work on this bill because it is designed around the Public Service Commission, who only regulates Georgia Power.
But in theory, would you be supportive of that?
I think so, yeah, but I would have to, think through it a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you. That answers my general question.
Thank you, Chairman. Any further questions?
Well, I was going to say,
Well,
I think
we're
Elizabeth
going
wanted
to
to follow
go,
up.
we're going to
Okay.
take questions. We're not going to.
Okay.
Yes, sir. What number are you? Gotcha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess for the gentleman that was just speaking, Chair Lady Camp, can you define for me what communities will be served through this legislation?
Well, it would be Georgia Power customers, basically, because that's all that would be eligible in this particular bill. But it would be basically, it would depend on where the grid location is. There are a lot of different factors that come into play on where it would be possible, and I'm going to let Bob Shearer speak a little more to that.
Yeah, as it's set up in this bill, that the community here, community solar is a term that gets used across the country for this size and model of program. But in this bill, the community would just be the subscribers, and they have to be Georgia Power customers.
Okay, and you made the comment in the bill, or it was mentioned earlier that, excuse me, that that this legislation does not require the land to be owned. Is that correct?
The land to be owned by whom?
Community solar.
Do you want to?
The solar provider can
The solar
lease the land
provider.
from the
Yeah,
owner.
it's
from the
leasing
owner.
land, yeah. Yes, it'd be an opportunity for a property owner to make highest and best use of their property based on what they believe it to be.
But it does not, it doesn't say that as community solar cannot own the land, right?
It does not have a prohibition in there at this point. If it needs to, we certainly can discuss that.
And then on line 42, you made the comment that it cannot be located on the same parcel as another system. I understand it's a 6 megawatt, but can it be located adjacent to the same parcel? Or is that a different owner of the parcel?
It's not like in the same parcel, it meets the requirements of paragraph. We amended from the original bill, we amended it so people could not interconnect these to become a multi-power level, power grade level. And that was the purpose of the amending that. If we need to further clarify, we certainly can. But the purpose in that, and we did go through legislative council for that terminology to make sure it was appropriate. So it could not be a variety of these 6 megawatts being added together to be 60 megawatts. That's not the intention at all.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, my question's for the woman who testified a moment ago. She said we import 1/6 of our energy. Where did that data come from?
That came from the EIA from their 2022 data that was published in 2023. I'm happy to share a copy of the report here.
Yes, please, because when you look on the Department of Energy's website, it has a different number.
She said that she's going to come for back. Any further, Representative? Yes, sir. Carry on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As far as who this question gets directed to, I'll let you guys decide who to answer it. I'm having a little bit of trouble with the financials, okay? When I say that, I'm talking about the concept that this whole program is built around as far as reimbursement. I'll just kind of run through a couple of things, and then y'all can decide who and how to answer this. First of all, when in the, on lines 34 through 36, we're defining avoided cost. And I noticed that it specifically excludes current and existing solar generation in that avoided cost calculation. I was just wondering the reasoning for that.
It excludes solar technology, you say?
That's the way I read it. It says avoided cost means the incremental cost to an electric utility which, but for the provision of energy and capacity from a solar technology, such electric utility would incur to generate or procure electricity from another source.
I don't believe that that's designed to exclude all solar from the calculation of avoided cost. The solar technology here refers to that used in the community solar project.
Okay. Okay. The next question that I had, Mr. Chairman, if I may ask a couple of questions here, sir. We go back over to, let's see, lines 84 through, let's say, 89, just a couple of things here. The comment was made that the Public Service Commission, through hearings and discussions and that sort of thing, would have the prerogative to set the credit rate. However, in the bill on line 84, each electric utility shall allocate, which shall doesn't give you an option, and then further on 85 and 86, it says that credit will be based on the utility's total aggregate retail rate on a per customer class basis, less the commission approved distribution and components, cost components, et cetera. It doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of prerogative there except possibly defining what that utility's aggregate average cost is, which is pretty much a definitive number. Am I missing something there?
That sounds right to me. It's derived from that number.
Okay. My next question would be to the fact, to the credit here. The average cost means, in my mind, that approximately half the customers pay more, half the customers pay less. So if we're applying the average cost to customers who happen to pay less than that average cost on a per kilowatt hour basis, there's a cost differential there. And again, I understand electric rates are not based on per kilowatt hours, but electric rates have base rates to cover fixed costs. Then they have, in many cases, tiered rates above that. But we're talking about an average cost is what's being, which is the shall here, being dictated to be used here. So we would create a situation where any customers who are paying less than that average rate would be imposing additional burden on the rest of the ratepayers to make up the difference based on that cost. Is that the case?
Well, if they're in that class, they would pay the same rate as everybody else in that class. But I think you're getting at it, would there be a cost shift because of how this is defined? And I think that that's a question for the Public Service Commission. And as I pointed out, especially on lines 96 through 105, if evidence of that comes forward, then there can be specific fees on subscribers only to address any of that.
Okay, and what I'm referring to is not necessarily on a class-by-class basis. It's individuals within the class, okay? Within the commercial classification of customers, if you will. You'll have customers who pay one rate and customers who pay a much higher rate. And that average is going to be somewhere in between. So if the guy at the bottom of the scale is getting reimbursed at a rate at the middle of the scale, he's basically being reimbursed more than he's paying per kilowatt hour. Which again, the difference has to go back on the ratepayers. Is that the case?
We'll ask him, so I want to make sure we keep this and answer the. So
yes, sir. Okay.
I'm going to take that Representative Anderson doesn't have a clear answer to the question, so I'm going to pose it like this. Can you know, the next time we're together, if we get together again, can you whiteboard us or bring us a handout of what that math would look like? I mean, you can put up. So, do we have something in there, Representative Camp?
We do. There was a handout given to committee members. I think it.
No, that was odd because normally they're supposed to pass through the chair and I didn't see one, but, no, that's fine. I would have known if I had seen, so is this the one you're looking for? Okay. Let's let, Representative Anderson look at that. You have a handout.
Yes, sir.
From the
I've
third
got
page
this
here.
thing
Take
handouts.
a look at that and then we'll come back.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If I could just very quickly,
Sure.
the rate-making process is complex, and there are a lot of different tariffs for different classes, and that's exactly why this bill sends the decision to the Public Service Commission, where we can sort through the specifics of those issues, because they are important. But to have a number specifically right now, I don't.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions, and we have a couple more from Representative Meeks. And this is a question that kind of goes to, in general, I found from a few years around here. You pointed out on line 75 and 76, such transactions shall not be considered retail sales of electricity and shall not be subject to the solar financing agent regulation under this. We get that in legislation all the time. Saying an elephant's not an elephant doesn't make it not be an elephant. So I need something myself underneath that other than, because there's going to be something down here later on in this bill, I'm sure, that's going to say, this bill conflicts with any other places of law. This bill prevails. All laws and parts of laws in conflict with this act are repealed. So saying that it doesn't conflict all of a sudden actually does, by act of law, repeal a piece of the territorial act, because we're saying this particular transaction doesn't qualify. That means if there's law somewhere else in the state. So I worry about that. You don't have to answer that today, but I mean that's just a general. We get that a lot all the time. Is like the sale of a Toyota is not the sale of a car, but it's really a car. So I would like us to look at that. The question I want to get to on the cost shifting is, tell me how this doesn't work something like this. And this is the question. If there's a small number of people in Georgia would avail themselves of this right now relative to the overall number of customers, right? So how is this not something similar to, hey, if everybody else in the state of Georgia that flies on Delta pays a penny, I can fly for free? I mean, that's sort of what we've got going here. If all the other subscribers at Georgia Power, it's just an incremental increase to them, very, very tiny. But because of that, they actually go the other way. They're paying more so that folks can fly. That's what the shift when we're talking about a cost shift, because is it not true that somebody has to maintain the grid? And somebody has to maintain, the base power load and those things. So explain to me, if you can, how that is not some type of a cost shift.
Well, it clearly says in this bill that the PSC has the power to figure out the fees, the structure, all of that. And if it's not going to be cost effective, conversation of Public Service Commission and Georgia Power figure out it's not going to be cost effective to ever do this, then it won't happen. No one will come to Georgia and do this.
Okay, well, I'll just follow that. Is it not true that we have a demonstration project going on with 5,000 customers in Georgia that have base net metering now, that by definition, they are flying for free, and the Public Service Commission finds that to be okay?
Well, I'm not familiar with that particular project, but I do have someone who can speak on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you're referring to the rooftop program at the Georgia PSC. We're community solar. It's apples to oranges. You're talking about a system that goes on a home that does net metering. We're talking about community solar, which has no net metering, that is subscriber-based, and it's going to be a bill credit.
Again, I'm not going to argue with you, but see, respectfully, Mr. Butler, you sitting here telling me this is not net metering doesn't make it not net metering. If they're selling, if you're asking to be paid something other than avoided cost, that is, for my 15 or 18 years in energy, that is what is loosely referred to as moving toward net metering.
We're not requesting that, sir. We're not.
And I understand, and I will give you credit that whoever wrote this bill did a really good job of trying not to make it that, but a credit on the bill that drives you to the cost of energy being that of a retail rate for the cost that's being paid for it looks, smells, and tastes like net metering.
Well, sir, we definitely have a different understanding of what the definition is, and I do appreciate the intent of your question. But at the end of the day, we asked Legislative Council not to put net metering in it, and I believe they did not, and I'm pretty sure they did their jobs well. But obviously, we can come talk about it more and point out other aspects.
Fair enough. Representative Meeks.
Just one quick question, Mr. Chairman. The third party's ability to sell a subscription based on energy capacity or a consumer's consumption, third party selling a subscription, is that not the definition of deregulation?
Not in my opinion, but
Okay.
I'm happy to let one of our, Bob, you want to speak on that one? The attorney.
Deregulation is when the customer has the full option to take their power from somebody else. Anybody that signs up for one of these programs would still have a Georgia Power bill and have to pay it. This just provides an additional positive source, energy on the grid that the subscribers can receive the benefits of on their bills.
Thank you. Number 4? Yes, sir.
All right, I got a question. What happens to the customer if something happens, excuse me, something happens to your facility and you've sold the credits? They already buy the credits, but you can't produce it. What happens to the customers in that aspect?
Excuse me. It's actually reverse. The energy is produced and then the credits come. So it's not like we're taking the money and then hoping and praying the sun shines. It is the reverse situation.
But it's a subscription though.
Correct.
So there's a recurring charge.
Takes, in fact, we talk about it in some of the documents, it takes a cycle or two for the credit to actually show up because the power must be generated and calculated and then adequately assigned to the ratepayer before any payment is received or transacted, if I'm understanding your question correctly.
Okay.
I just have one last question, and we have a number of speakers we'll go to. I think it was Mr. Butler that said earlier in the presentation, their community solar projects exist in
Distributed generation, not community solar. And it's in over 80 counties, and it's in coordination with Georgia Power. This is through their RFP program.
I mean, do you think that those aren't, or you represent those aren't solar projects?
They are, but they're not community solar.
Well, I mean, okay, so that you want to own the definition of community solar for this bill. I have heard for 15 years the term community solar as a distributed, between rooftop and utility scale solar. So I'm going to use lowercase community solar as in 80 counties in Georgia. Would you say that's true?
They're all programs through RFPs with Georgia Power, yes, sir.
But I mean, there are 80 counties that have solar fields in them.
Yes, or more.
Okay, I mean, you're getting people behind you are shaking their head the other direction.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not 100% familiar with the program you're talking about in Georgia, but
I'm not talking about any program I'm familiar with.
Okay.
I'm just, Mr. Butler said there were solar, what I thought I heard him say, there were solar programs in 80 counties that existed in Georgia that were, larger than rooftop, smaller than utility scale solar. So that's just what I was asking.
Yep.
Did I understand that correctly?
I think the fundamental difference between those programs and community solar is that we have subscribers.
Well, I understand
in ours who then receive
I understand
rate.
I understand the fundamental difference you're saying. What I wanted to try to get to, but there are distributed solar projects out there that are 35 megawatts. I mean, is that what you're talking about, Steve?
Not in this DG program. They're typically.
No, I'm not talking about this program. This program's not here. I'm just, you said there were, you brought it up. There were 80 solar projects. They're out there.
Distributed generation, which is not utility.
Right, okay. So my question then is, if 80 people are doing this now without this, something must be working. What are we doing for this? I mean, who's the winner here in this?
That's a very good question.
Okay.
As far as we know right now, that is a very defined program. And when Georgia Power submitted their paperwork that we needed more energy, that it sprung us to understand that we could fill a void here and be very beneficial. Those programs have a very scheduled kind of presence, if you will. And it's been a very measured approach. It's been very successful. The PSC has mandated that all of it must be below avoided cost, just like they can do with this program as well. And I'll reiterate, this is just an option to expand some of the things that have already been successful here, as you just noted. Community solar cannot be done in the terms that we're defining it here without legislation. Now, if Georgia Power wants to continue to increase their DG programs, I think that would be a great thing for the state of Georgia. There's no reason why we can't do both.
Okay, so this is the question. I'm going to make it last one. If you don't have an answer right now, that's fine. We'll get back to it. So my question then goes to, why can't this be done with agreements between private parties? And why does legislation have to be passed to allow it to happen? Can you not enter into a power purchase agreement with the utilities and create the same thing here? The difference is, what I'm getting at, the difference is you want us to mandate that we let the PSC set the tariffs and the rates. We
would give them the option. I think that's the important part.
Well, I mean, I know what that means. I've been, I didn't come down here last week. You give them the option, they're going to make a small group of people happy if it only costs 1/10 of a cent to another group. But what worries me about that is, why are we injecting ourselves between contracts between private people? Because there's even a portion in this bill that says that the utility has to buy the overage if you haven't sold it. They have to buy it from you.
Bob, you want to answer that real quick?
With regards to buying the overage at avoided cost, that's already true. Under federal law, PURPA requires the utility to purchase that power at avoided cost. What this does is it allows for subscribers to save money on their bills if they subscribe to the power.
Okay, now you've piqued my interest here, because under that same law, am I not correct that we could pass this bill, this could go into place, you could sell the power, or you're not selling this, you're selling credits, you're selling certificates for subscriptions. Could you not then come back and apply that federal law and make the utility buy all the electricity generated also? How would this carve out of that? How would this carve out of them having to pay you avoided costs for the, again? You understand the question?
I think so. The utility has to buy all the power from this size facility if it gets built and hooked up to Georgia Power's system.
Okay.
That's currently true. What this bill would do is allow for people who can't access solar in other ways to basically fund that facility through subscriptions and receive the benefit of their investment on their power bills.
Okay, but the question I have is, if you do these certificates, is that what we're calling them? Credits, whatever, is it certificates, am I right? Yeah, if you buy these certificates, what keeps you from also coming back and say, hey, and by the way, all the power we generate, you got to buy from us at avoid cost in addition to that, in addition to giving the bill credits? Where in this law says you can't get both?
Well, so I think I'm getting a little confused here in the
well,
question.
I hadn't thought of that until the gentleman mentioned the federal plan.
Well, and so what I wanted to talk about is that unsubscribed, because that's sort of where the conversation started going. And there's a couple of things here. We have seen, again, in other states, how this operates. And we have a copy of Excel's report from 2022. It was completed in 2023, in which it outlines all of the community solar programs that are in their utility market. Of all of the programs in the market, 2.2 gigawatts of community solar in that utility market is up and going today. It only has 1.7% unsubscribed. So of 2.2 gigs, we are talking about less than 2% in a year when unsubscribed in a market that is up and running and functioning very well. The interesting part is, of all of those little line items, of all the programs that are of community solar, the one that was owned by the utility is 23% unsubscribed. The ones that were owned by private investors who do not have a guarantee of profit, who do not have a guarantee that they will make money, and they have to make sure that they have subscriptions, those are the ones that were subscribed at a higher level. because the private developers have taken personal dollars and put into the infrastructure, not ratepayer dollars. I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt your question.
No, but tell me this, if Georgia, I've been to I know we're talking about Georgia Power, but I've been to some EMCs that have partnered with folks. I think Solar Ranch, or am I right? Silicon Ranch. Yeah. I went to one of those openings. So the fact that somebody doesn't sign up for Green Power EMC to buy that doesn't mean they turn off some of the solar panels. So the fact that they're subscribed or not subscribed doesn't mean that the panel is not generating electricity, correct?
So
it's really a moot point whether a utility solar field is subscribed or not.
Well, it is actually a very important part, because in order to be community solar, we have to have subscribers.
Well,
we have to be able
but
to serve
the utility
communities.
does not.
The utility is
Okay.
I'm not speaking on their behalf.
Right, okay, thanks. We have number 2, Representative Romo, Representative Carson. Let me turn you back on, John, there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe my question was answered in a roundabout way, because I think the chair was asking in regard to, there's 80 already installations of various types. My question more specifically is, I understand from the utility Georgia Power that we already have a community solar program in Georgia. And if that's the case, and again, maybe this was already covered, but if that's the case, we already have community solar in Georgia, why do we need this particular piece of legislation?
Thank you. Georgia Power does have a community solar program. They have 8 megawatts in that program right now. My understanding is that it's undersubscribed. Less than half of it is subscribed to. And I can't speak for why people haven't subscribed to it, but I do know that Georgia Power markets it as a premium product, meaning they won't guarantee that it'll save you money on your bill if you sign up for it. So if you think about like the purpose of the programs are different. You could see Georgia Powers as a way to support the development of solar power by paying a little extra to make sure that it gets built. You could see these as a bill savings program, offering the benefits specifically to the subscribers.
Any further questions? Yes, sir. Number 5 down there.
Is it on? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Right. A little green light's not on this particular microphone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the gentleman that was just testifying, I'm struggling with this word community. When I first heard this bill explained last year, I believe it was, we were talking about nonprofit schools, very small organizations being able to basically band together, find the land or whatever, or entice a developer to come in to be able to enjoy the benefits of solar power. Is that not true?
The bill last year was tax exempt entities only.
So is it not true, the way I read this bill, that the community is basically the entire universe of Georgia Power customers? Is that not true in Georgia?
Do you want to do this one? I feel like it goes to this.
So if I understand the question correctly, and I apologize if I don't, this bill defines community as churches, schools, businesses, individual ratepayers. It does not discriminate against one class of ratepayer over another.
When you, a follow-up question then, because I'm totally confused now, because I thought we were basically talking about individual household ratepayers that would be able to subscribe to this program. Is it not true that every Georgia Power household would be able to subscribe to any given community, quote, community solar power project? It's not geographically limited.
It is only utility region limited. So for example, if a community solar project was to establish itself inside of Georgia Power's market, then anyone in that market could subscribe. The project could not be outside of, cross a utility line.
And I thought that's what I was saying. So what percentage of the state of Georgia, or how many households are served by the Georgia Power in Georgia, approximately?
We have a map in your packet. Yeah.
But here's roughly a map.
Approximately how many customers, resident?
2.8 million.
All right, so, all right, well, given that number, and thank you for that statistic,
It's
Would
households,
all-
not ratepayers, sorry.
If any given project were to be built, is it not true that any one of the 2.8 million current Georgia residential customers could buy a participation unit in that project?
As long as a project was inside of that utility region, any one of those 2.8 could subscribe to that
But
project.
that would be, I don't know how I could articulate it any better, as I understand it. Are you saying that each one of these little,
Just the white
Just the
areas
white.
are the only areas in the state that we can service, and that is 2.8 million customers, just to give you a geographic boundary of those customers and who they are. Just the white areas. Those blue areas are all EMC, MEAG territories, and they are carved out.
okay, so within these service, then we're still saying the same thing. Where Georgia Power sells electricity to residences in Georgia, one down here, and I don't know if that's Crisp County or where, way down here. If that county builds one, someone in, what's that county right there? Dade County could participate in the
They
program.
certainly could, and they can right now. For instance, you have EMCs in South Georgia that sell to North Georgia, so that's currently allowed.
I'm talking about, they could participate in, in
Yes,
this
they-
program. So when we say community, I think that's a misnomer. Bottom line is the entire community that you're describing is every residential ratepayer that's currently on the Georgia Power system within the boundaries of the state of Georgia,
Well, within the boundaries of the Georgia Power territory, which, as you can see, is pretty limited.
which is within their service areas of the state of Georgia.
Yes, sir. There's just not going to be a lot of incentive to do so, because most people are going to, like, for instance, most people are going to subscribe to something closer to them, but it's certainly possible.
Okay, so my problem is the nomenclature. It's almost like, oh, we got a little lending library over here our neighborhood's going to do. We're going to be able to participate in this farmers co-op or whatever. But to say it's community, it's really not. Is it not true that with this numerous distributed community, quote, solar power projects that your organization represents, is it not true, in fact, that that's really another utility producing electricity?
No, sir. If we could control our own billing and all these other things, it's not, we're just a part or an option of what the utility can provide, and we're not a utility company.
But is it not true that you're producing electricity?
We are producing electricity and then providing it to the utility.
But the electricity you're producing is, every one of these proposed projects is a for-profit projects, correct?
Yes, sir. They're investor-owned, and they take on all the risk that comes with that, unlike the utility.
Okay. Well,
And that's where we create a lot of our savings, by the way, is our ability to invest and not burden the taxpayer.
Thank you. I just need some clarity.
We have a couple more questions, Representative Anderson, but since, Mr. Butler, since you mentioned that, you said the investor and they take on the risk. Explain to me what financial risk they have.
Sorry,
I wasn't going to go there, but I mean, you
I'm
asked that,
gonna-
because I don't see any risk. They are guaranteed to sell everything they buy. They get a tax credit. What risk? If I were to build a store and you have to buy all my donuts and I get a credit for building the store, I don't see how my capital's at risk.
Well, hopefully the donuts are good, and then I'll buy some. But the risk is on the developer because they use private investment money to put the infrastructure in place. So the steel in the ground, the panels up, the interconnection fees is a huge piece that we haven't really gotten into.
But they have a guaranteed customer. By definition,
They do not have a guaranteed customer. No, they do not. I do not understand how.
The bill says, and the gentleman said earlier, there's a federal law that says they have to buy all of the power from them above the certified thing. So where's the risk?
So that's assuming it goes through the interconnection costs and the interconnection program. So I think we need to step back a little bit here because you first have to, one, identify your site, two, find your financial investors to actually back it with private dollars, not with ratepayer dollars. Three, then you have to work with the utility to come up with what's called the interconnection fees and costs. That is paid 100% by us. The utility sets the price, and we either pay it or we don't. That is all.
The Public Service Commission sets the price.
The utilities do.
No,
And the Public Commission, thank you
Yeah.
for the correction there. But that is all paid for by
Okay.
private dollars.
okay, but once that happens, the eyes wide open, you're guaranteed a return.
You're not guaranteed a return. No, I
Okay.
don't know how you're guaranteed a return on investment. I don't understand that.
Okay, well, I mean, okay, well, we'll take it offline, because I don't want to, I'll get with you offline.
I would appreciate
No,
that.
I'll definitely do that, but I want to keep it, Representative Anderson, you had one more.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to the point of the chairman's question there, on lines 88 and 89, it does say, "Such bill credit mechanisms shall reasonably allow for the creation, financing, and accessibility of community solar facilities," which by definition, the accessibility would mean that it would have to be able to stay in business. That's just a comment. But I did have a question related to Chairman Williamson's questions regarding the customers that would be available to participate through subscription in this program. And you'd mentioned the Georgia Power Service Territory and the map that is basically the defined service territory under the Territorial Act. We do have facilities all over the state that are not in that service territory that Georgia Power does provide service to. Those are considered, they were at the time of construction, considered customer choice facilities with a connected load of 900 kilowatts or greater. Would all of those facilities be eligible to participate through subscription in this program also?
Yeah, if they're Georgia Power customers, they can participate. If they choose to, it opens the market up. And I think that goes similarly to the community question. It's a choice. If someone decides they want to subscribe to one miles away, they can. If they think that's too far to stomach, then they won't. And that's part of the risk as well.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Any further questions? Yes. You good? We're all set? Okay. All right, I have the sign-up sheet that we took care of, Mr. Butler, Ms. Holt, and Mr. Bob, is it Sher? Yes, so we're taking there. I have Brian Fitzpatrick. Where are you? Are you Brian? Okay, there you go. Yes, sir. Tell us who you are and what you want to tell us.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr.
sir.
Chairman, and thanks for having me today, and thanks for being out here on President's Day. My name is Brian Fitzpatrick. I'm the co-chair of policy of Georgia SEIA, and I work with a lot of the folks that were just up on the podium, and I am for this bill. I wanted just to mention a couple of additional things, and I see that, Chairman, you have this packet in front of you right now, that if you have any questions on, I'm happy to answer. But as you see on there, we already know, based on the interim IRP that Georgia Power put out a couple of months back, that we are facing a severe energy deficit. So what this program offers to the state of Georgia and to Georgia Power customers is that private investment will come in and finance additional clean energy resources instead of ratepayers. And so, I think it's fair to say, solar is not a baseload power. However, it provides energy during the peak hours when utility needs it the most. I want to address a couple of the questions that came up recently in regards to community. And, community solar is a term that's used in a lot of different jurisdictions. Community solar, in fact, is also used by Georgia Power in their community solar program. And so we're looking at the same types of projects that give subscribers the opportunities to subscribe to these projects. However, we are looking to pass savings back to the ratepayers. So just to give you an idea of what this bill will do for the state of Georgia, private investment will inject billions of dollars into Georgia's economy. And so this is a massive economic development investment. This is an investment and brings jobs and local and domestic supply chains to the construction of these facilities. Also, for the operation of these facilities, it's jobs in the O&M and the operation and maintenance. It's lease payments to rural landowners. It's property taxes to local governments. And so these projects we're proposing are 6 megawatt solar projects, take up between 25 to 30 acres. They provide energy to the distribution grid, not the transmission grid. These generation facilities are spread throughout Georgia, and they're not centrally located. So these distributed generation facilities provide resiliency to the grid statewide. Right now, Georgia Power customers don't have access to solar savings. So they don't have access to put a solar project up on their roof or on their business and get the savings from the solar. And in case you don't know, solar is the cheapest form of electricity in Georgia. So the only folks that are putting solar on the roof right now is if they are wealthy and they can afford for the investment to take many, many years for that investment to pay back. So this program will provide badly needed savings to residential customers, many of those living below the poverty line, renters and property owners, people without suitable roofs for solar panels, tax-exempt entities like churches, schools, and public entities who have a duty to provide the cheapest and most reliable form of energy to their communities and businesses. I wanted to walk through the process, if I could, of putting up one of these solar projects and how it would work between the solar company, the utility, and the ratepayer. And I think that is something that I just wanted to get clear today and walk through these 7 steps. Number 1, a solar company begins the development of a solar project and applies to be a subscriber organization with the Georgia PSC. Once or if they get approved, the solar company submits an interconnection application to the utility, works through the studying phase, and gets approval to interconnect from the utility. The solar company would then build a solar project with private investment. The solar company would then go out to the market and identify community solar subscribers and sign them up. And when they do, that's no credit check, no monthly subscription with a cancel anytime policy. And this, again, works great for renters and those living below the poverty line. Subscriber receives the utility bill from the utility showing a kilowatt-hour solar credit has been applied to their account. Their utility bill is less. The subscriber would also receive a second bill from the solar company for those solar credits. And when I say credits, we're talking kilowatt hours, not dollars. On average, across the country, community solar programs save between 10 to 20% less on the value of the kilowatt-hour credit. Subscribers have received energy at a discount, as well as contributing to a cleaner, more reliable Georgia without ratepayer investment. I won't go through all of the papers that we submitted today to the committee, but I'm happy to answer any questions on those if you like.
Are there questions for the gentleman? Questions? You have no questions?
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Yep. Doug Teeper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
members of the committee. My name is Doug Teeper. I represent Georgia Conservation Voters, statewide organization, nonprofit, nonpartisan. I feel that I need to give you a little bit of background about myself. I started intervening in Georgia Public Service Commission proceedings in the early 1980s, before I was even out of the University of Georgia. Sometime after that, I got elected to the Georgia House of Representatives, where I was elected for 16 years. So I have been in your seat. And as a matter of fact, I wanted to mention this. I served on what was then called the House Industry Committee under Chairman Sonny Watson. And we were sitting in the same seats when there was a change in the natural gas industry here in Georgia. As many of you remember, when I was growing up in Georgia, you got 3 utility bills. You got one from Southern Bell for your telephone, you got one from Georgia Natural Gas, and you got one from Georgia Power. Well, things have changed. We no longer get a bill from Southern Bell, and we no longer necessarily get a bill from Georgia Natural Gas. We have some choices. And I think that may be indeed happening in the electric industry as well. I always used to, when I ran for office, I used to tell people that I was for free enterprise and competition. And I assume pretty much everybody that I served with in the Georgia legislature supported free enterprise and competition. But I got to tell you, listening to some of the responses to this bill, I'm questioning whether the Georgia Republican Party and the Georgia Democratic Party, if they're not the Republican and Democratic Socialist Communist Party, because they don't seem to believe in free enterprise or competition. I don't know how many farmers we have on the committee, but I'd be curious how many folks still use a mule to do their plowing on their farm. My guess is not a lot of folks use a mule to do their plowing on their field. Technology changes, and I think all of us have to adapt. I know most of us who get elected represent the status quo. If we're used to dealing with Georgia Power to promote economic development, that's the way we're used to doing it. They bring wonderful jobs to our community, and we think that's the only way it is. But folks, I really believe that times are changing, and we have to get with the program. I've got another question. How much of your electric bill goes for fuel? Not all of your electric bill pays for the guaranteed return on investment for your power plant. Much of it goes, or some of it goes, for whatever kind of fuel you're using, be it oil, natural gas, or coal. There's a percentage of your bill that goes for fuel. So there's a very simple question here. What is the cost of solar energy fuel? That'd be tough for y'all to answer, I believe. One final category of questions here. I've been dealing with energy and environmental issues for many, many years, and I've been astonished by both Georgia Power and the Georgia Public Service Commission. For any of y'all who were paying attention, they built, or currently, let's use the current example, Plant Vogtle Units 3 and 4. And when they proposed those plants, they gave a certain cost that it was supposed to cost and a certain deadline that it was supposed to be ready by. I want to tell everybody here, and specifically the members of the legislature, if you came to me as a business person and said that a plant was going to cost so many hundreds of millions of dollars and it was going to be ready by this date, and then it turned out to cost billions of dollars and it was years late, every one of you would be deserve to be fired. And not just fired, but run out of the state. I can't believe anybody as an elected official would put up with this kind of business in which your constituents, every one of them, if you're not, some of you who are in EMCs are paying part of the cost as well, but every one of you deserve to be fired if you allow a company that...
Excuse me just a second. I've given you great latitude. You're a friend. I serve with you in this body. If you want to litigate the 3 and 4, it's across the street with the Public Service Commission. We're here today to talk about 1152.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in summary, I think y'all all have an opportunity to promote free enterprise and competition. You have someone who wants to come to Georgia, provide solar energy at a cost that's a lot lower than anything else that's being presented with you right now, and you have a great opportunity to do your constituents a great service and save them money. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lieber. I'm going to leave you, again, great latitude I gave you with, and y'all come up to my office sometime. I'll show you a picture of, hang on one second, I'll show you a picture of the representative when we used to have the panoramic. Representative Tieper would go out this door after the panoramic passed him and come in this door. So he is in one of my panoramics twice.
Well, there's two of me, so I could vote
There's
yes
two of
and
it.
no.
But wouldn't you agree, I'm just going to leave you this to ponder, and we'll talk after the meeting. Wouldn't you believe that the truest form of free enterprise is let two private organizations get together and make their own deal and not have the five live cells that the Public Service Commission have to set their prices for them?
I think that...
Wouldn't that be the truest form of free enterprise that you were talking about?
Not when the state is still building roads.
I'm not sure roads have anything to do with 1152, but I appreciate you. Moving on, Brian Jacob.
Thank you very much. Brian Jacob with the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. We are a nonprofit clean energy advocacy organization promoting responsible and equitable energy choices throughout the Southeast. And SACE, as we're called, we support HB 1152 because we support community solar. In fact, we support solar across the entire market spectrum of solar. So we support utility scale all the way down to residential rooftop, and community solar serves a very important role on that distributed energy, distributed generation side of the spectrum for businesses and residents who either can't or don't want to put solar on their rooftop. It gives them that opportunity. So I would encourage you to vote favorably on this bill. Georgia should be proud that we are in the top 10 states for utility scale solar, but we also ought to be disappointed that we're in the bottom 10 states on that distributed generation solar component. And this bill will actually be an enabler to help right that ship and get us back on track for the distributed generation solar component. And it'll give opportunity, like I said, for people who don't want to put solar on their rooftops to have access to solar, which has already been said, is the cleanest and least cost electricity option in Georgia. So I encourage you to consider voting for this bill, please.
I'm sorry, any questions? You have none. Thank you very much. Wilson Millard and Jeff Grubb, y'all are both down there at the same time. Are y'all a tag team, or are you doing it one at a time? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir. Mallard. Like a duck. What did I say? Millard?
Millard. That's
Millard.
Right.
There you go. I'm confused.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, guests, thanks very much for having us. We are planning to present as a panel today. My name's Wilson Mallard. I'm the Director of Renewable Development for Georgia Power.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I'm Jeff Grubb. I'm the Director of Resource Policy and Planning at Georgia Power, which means we're the group that's responsible for generation planning at the company to make sure we have a fleet that will meet our customers' needs. And so I'm going to go first, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Mallard to give a lot more examples of why we oppose the bill. I've been with the company for 20 years. I've been working on the Integrated Resource Plan, which is our plan to meet customers' needs since 2010. I've been the company's lead witness in the 2019 IRP, the 2022 IRP, and the 2023 IRP update that's at the commission right now. And so as you all know, this body, this legislative body, the commission, has given us and the other entities in the state the responsibility for reliability and serving customers' needs, and we take that very seriously. And we're always looking at how to meet customers' needs around the clock. And so very high level, we have two types of resources on the system. We have those resources you can turn on and off when we need to turn them on and off, and we have others that produce energy when they're available to do it, like solar. Both are very valuable. Both are very important parts of the system, but they are both very different. And so one thing I'd like to reiterate is we keep hearing that there's an energy crisis in Georgia. There is not an energy crisis in Georgia. Again, we take our responsibility very seriously. Just last month, on January the 17th at 7 o'clock in the morning, the Southern Company system, Georgia Power system, and the state of Georgia set an all-time winter peak demand, and we met all of our customers' needs. There is no energy crisis in Georgia. The IRP update has been mentioned that it's an energy crisis. That is not the case. We have 2 or 3 years before we need to add generation, And the commission's process allows us to go and make sure we're adding resources, and that procedure is going on right now. And in that process, the resources that we need are for the continuing growth of the state. It's not our current level of load, it's to continue to allow the state to grow because we've seen such economic development growth here in Georgia. And those resources that we need and that we've proposed are dispatchable resources. A community solar like this program, Mr. Mallard's going to talk to all the great renewable programs we have at Georgia Power. Community solar program does not help meet those needs, especially one under this structure that doesn't have an obligation or a contract to serve Georgia Power. We do not plan on it when we look at how many resources we have to meet those winter morning loads. So again, solar is a very important role to play. Mr. Mallard will hit on that, but there are two types of different resources, and that is what we're looking at deploying. So as you consider this bill, it should not be in the light of this helps with the economic development needs that we're stating. And then the other thing we've heard is that it's the lowest cost. Cost-to-cost generation options can be very complicated. There's fixed costs, there's variable costs. I don't want to get into all of that, but just because something's the lowest cost doesn't mean you just need to keep adding it. It's about value. Solar absolutely has a value. And we'll talk again about, we've got thousands of megawatts of solar, and we're going to continue to do solar. So as you consider this bill, and Mr. Mallard again will hit other reasons we oppose it, it's not that it will help with any kind of energy crisis because we're not in one, and it shouldn't be just because it's cheapest. There's value to each of those resources on the system. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mallard, but I'll be here for questions as well.
Thank you, Mr. Grubb. Chairman, committee members, as I said, Wilson Mallard. I'm the Director of Renewable Development at Georgia Power. I come to you today to testify leveraging my 17 years of experience working on renewable energy at Georgia Power. I have either led or been a part of every renewable procurement that Georgia Power's ever solicited. Additionally, I've either designed or supervised the design of all of Georgia Power's programs, including our community solar program and our other subscription programs that we have. It's based on that experience and the fact that I'm here today not as a lobbyist but as a witness. Mr. Grubb and I are used to testifying in front of the Public Service Commission. What I would say to you today are the same things that we would say under oath and probably will say again under oath across the street sooner or later. But just to set the record straight on some of the things we have heard today, I just have to fundamentally disagree with several of the statements. And again, leveraging all that experience, we heard today that this bill is not net metering. I come to you today to tell you it is absolutely net metering. It's offering a retail credit for a wholesale product. Beyond that, it's virtual net metering. It's not limited by the size of a rooftop. These projects can be everywhere, anywhere in the state, as we heard. Project can hook up in Bainbridge and serve a customer in Clayton, Georgia. That can definitely happen. It's absolutely cost shifting as well. Based on my experience, 7 years before I worked on renewables, I worked in the rate department. I understand how Georgia Power's rates work. We count on all those kilowatt hour sales to collect the revenue that we need to pay for the grid, the fixed cost, the variable cost, the fuel cost that we heard about. When this bill allows those payments that used to go to Georgia Power to help pay for those costs to then be directed to a third party for this solar subscription, that's absolutely cost shifting. Also heard that the program was 100% regulated. I'll point to you in just a second. We can go through line by line in a few sections. But I also read the language that said specifically that this program was not subject to this particular code section. So I'm having a little trouble understanding that conflict. Additionally, we heard that the cost shifting can be mitigated or eliminated by the PSC. Based on my reading of the bill, the options available to the PSC are extremely limited, and I'll point out a couple of those areas in the bill as well that might keep the PSC's hands tied. I'll tell you that the market for solar in Georgia right now is extremely vibrant. Georgia Power has a really big distributed generation market. Contrary to what you've heard, we've got over 500 projects, over 300 megawatts of distributed generation out there that we procure through our commission's regulated, competitive, compliant with commission rule RFP process. It's through that process that we get the best prices. Those RFPs have been unfilled. There's no shortage of opportunity for solar developers to participate in the DG market to bring projects up to 6 megawatts in size. The fact of the matter is those are competitive RFPs. They require comparison to Georgia Power's avoided cost or wholesale rate. And the scheme that we're talking about today is comparing the value of solar to a customer's retail rate. That's why we're able to generate cost savings. When we talk avoided cost, we're talking rates around 4 to 5 cents or so. That's sort of the bogey we're competing against. When we're talking about competing against retail rates, those rates are averaging about 11 cents across Georgia Power's customers. It's in that way that this program will allow participating customers to be able to save money, but it's absolutely going to shift costs and raise rates for everybody. And I don't want to let Mr. Grubb's point be lost. Based on the nature of the agreement, Georgia Power will have nothing but an interconnection agreement with these providers. There'll be no power purchase agreement. There'll be no certainty that these facilities will be there long term. These facilities will count zero towards meeting Georgia Power's dispatchable capacity need. So if I can, I'll walk through just a couple of sections of the bill and talk about how we interpret those particular sections. So as we talk about shifting costs to non-participants. So the Solar Lobby has done a really good job in making sure that we know that Georgia Power is still the provider. Georgia Power is still on the hook for power at night. Georgia Power is still going to provide storm restoration. Georgia Power is still going to provide that customer service. We remain responsible for the reliability of the grid, but yet now those revenues that we used to collect from customers, and that's the way utility rate design works. We collect all the costs to fund the business, to pay for the grid, to pay for the generating plants, the power lines. Now we're going to short our collection of those costs. That is absolutely going to create a cost shift. And so a couple of things I'd like to point out. On page 4, line 87, let me just double check and make sure that my copy is lining up. So it was referenced earlier that there's a provision here that the bill credit might be updated based on approved distribution components. So again, as I read this line, I'll start at 85. The bill credit is based on a utility's retail rate. That is net metering. That's retail net metering. We can't adjust it by the distribution cost components, it seems. I'm here to tell you that non-fuel expenses at Georgia Power only represent about 15% of the total cost to serve. So we're going to be leaving about 85% of the rest of those costs unrecovered, as the language prevents any adjustment based on anything other than distribution cost. On page 5, lines 95 through 105, where the fees that are contemplated to be able to minimize any impact or any cost shifting. The way I read these fees is they're tilted pretty solidly towards the unregulated solar providers. Starting at line 96, the fees imposed, if any, so it sounds like there's a bit of a hurdle there just to get a fee at all, have to be proven to the Public Service Commission evidentiary hearing. But then line D, number D, line 104, seems to me that really restricts the amount of cost that can be recovered. It can only be 1% of the bill credit value. So if we're thinking about that in terms of cents per kilowatt hour, and I'm not sure if that could be, 8 or 10 cents or something, but we're talking 80 cents or so. If we're talking 8 cents, it's a really low, limited amount that we can recover there, absent additional action by the Public Service Commission. Just a couple other things as far as additional cost to non-participants. There are many more costs to non-participants than what we've talked about already. It's been a little bit of misinformation that I'd like to clear up about the interconnection cost. The interconnection cost that Georgia Power charges to solar providers, these unregulated third parties, those cover the local distribution cost, and the local distribution costs only. They don't provide any cost recovery for system impacts, again, with the example with community solar facilities that could be located all over the state, South Georgia, in any place, and then subscribers being in other parts of the state. So it's as if these solar providers would get to use the grid for free. Additionally, the bill calls for some complex billing requirements that absent additional costs to participating customers would be borne by non-participants. Lastly, at the end of the bill, and I won't point out the details too specifically, but there's a 15-minute data requirement for all Georgia Power customers. I can tell you that right now, Georgia Power, per PSC order, we are providing customers with hourly data. It'd be a significant additional cost to provide 15-minute data. So some significant amounts of additional costs and cost shifting. Committee, I'd like to draw your attention to a handout that was in your packet, and it's a cost shifting example. So these are illustrative costs, but we base these on Georgia Power typical customers and an expectation of output from a community solar facility. So on the left, you'd see a typical customer paying about $156 a month for a 1,000 kilowatt hour monthly bill. On the right, that same customer, if they subscribe to a 2 kW block that produced 150 kilowatt hours a month per block, now is only going to be billed for 700 kilowatt hours. So there's the shortfall. There's the 300 kilowatt hours that are no longer, the revenues for those are no longer going to be collected by Georgia Power. Those instead will go to the third-party solar provider. So that creates a revenue shortfall. That's $49 a month. Again, that owes to the nature of utility rate design. We're serving those customers. We're counting on recovering those required costs through all the kilowatt hours. Now, after a customer participates in this program, we've still got all of the responsibility to provide reliable service, but now we're short $49 in this example. Again, these are just illustrative costs. If I could hit on a couple more topics. In Georgia Power's perspective and analysis, HB 1152 is absolutely a deregulation bill. It deregulates a portion of the electric system. Any projects under 6 megawatts are basically going to be deregulated. Again, I'll point back to the language in the bill that talks about, well, one moment. So page 4, line 75. It starts and says, such transactions shall not be considered retail sales of electricity. So we're talking about, and Mr. Chairman, you hit on this earlier, even though we're saying this is not a retail sale of electricity, if the third-party solar provider is putting electrons, kilowatt hours, on the grid at the request of an existing customer, that customer is then paying that third-party provider directly for those kilowatt hours. That seems to me like that's a sale of electricity. Specifically, the providers are not regulated by the Public Service Commission. So again, I'm having a little trouble, and maybe somebody can help me understand how this language that seems to completely exclude these third-party solar providers from this entire code section, now we're going to count on the Public Service Commission to be able to regulate them when this language right here seems to say specifically that they're not regulated. In our expectation and understanding, that opens up the door for somebody else to establish jurisdiction to regulate, and that somebody might be the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So the bill specifically states on page 4, line 71, that these subscriptions represent a sale of energy or capacity. The capacity word is a big one. We're not just talking electrons. These subscriptions could be based on capacity as well. Those are hallmarks of deregulated markets. Those are hallmarks of unbundled rates whereby customers pay separate fees for customer charges, distribution charges, generation charges. And so if that third party is unregulated, a third-party solar provider is unregulated by the Georgia Public Service Commission, and there's a complaint, I could see a scenario where a complainant files with the FERC, and FERC wants to establish jurisdiction over our distribution lines that now have multiple power providers using the same line to serve customers. So again, if the energy's put on the grid and the customer buys it, that looks like and seems like, and through our analysis, that does represent a sale of electricity. That's wheeling, and that opens us up to the risk of losing our jurisdiction and losing the control that this body and the Georgia PSC have used to define really a national leading renewable energy market. Just a couple more things. We talked a little bit about the revenue streams for the third-party solar developers. There's another handout in your packet that shows the revenue streams as we understand them that would accrue to these unregulated solar providers. So first, they'll sell the subscriptions. They'll have a revenue stream coming from customers. Second, all these projects would qualify as qualifying facilities under PURPA. So they're 6 megawatts and under. They use solar as renewable energy. It's a real simple process to self-register with FERC and get that QF status. At that point, Georgia Power and all utilities are obligated to buy the power. I'm not sure the language in the bill would prevent both of those things from happening at one time. Solar industry is not a homogeneous group. Even if one group might say, hey, where it's not our intention to do that, another developer might say, well, hey, I'm gonna double dip there. I'm gonna sell my subscription and sell the energy to Georgia Power. In that way, that sale to Georgia Power is a guaranteed sale at that avoided cost price. A couple other points in the bill. There's another revenue stream from the sale of renewable energy credits. If you look at page 5, lines 106 through 108, it makes it clear that the renewable energy credits don't automatically go to the subscribing customer. So renewable energy credits have value to the extent they were not included in the agreement with the subscribing customer. Those RECs could be sold on the open market. They do have a value. There's lots of customers with voluntary carbon goals, and they would be interested in buying those. And last, this came up last week, but there's absolutely a tax credit available through the IRA, significant tax credit, and it's funded by all federal taxpayers, including federal taxpayers in Georgia. So those are the elements of the 4 revenue streams as we see them, the 4 ways for these unregulated solar providers to attract those revenues and then again be able to make a profitable business on the backs of Georgia Power ratepayers by using the grid. And that's really the last point I'd like to make here. We talked a little bit about the interconnection cost. Yes, it's true, Georgia Power has a robust interconnection study process. That process is already in existence. It exists for our projects coming in our DG RFP. It exists for these qualifying facilities. It's a fair process. It's meant to identify the cost to interconnect. But it really is focused on those local costs to safely and reliably interconnect. The language in this bill does not even speak to the potential to recover costs for the use of the rest of the grid. And the example we mentioned before where a residential customer or maybe even a very large business, a data center or a big box store who could subscribe to significant amounts of community solar and really get a free use of the grid. I'll close. Mr. Chairman and Mr. Grubb and I are available for questions, but I'll just close by restating our adamant opposition to this bill. The risks far outweigh any of the benefits. We really do have a great electricity market in Georgia. It's the envy of a lot of states. We've got a really good solar market in Georgia too. I take a lot of pride. I've, again, dedicated my whole career to this. I've been working the last 17 years. I know lots of the solar developers that are active in the state, lots of them in this room. We have a very constructive process. This body has set the stage with the Territorial Act and the Cogen Act and the IRP Act, and then the Public Service Commission thoughtfully and constructively regulates us. Y'all, we got one of the best solar markets in the country. We've got one of the best overall electricity markets with rates 11% below the national average. We've got very good reliability, customer satisfaction, J.D. Power Awards. Georgia Power just won one recently. That's all really good. One of the arguments might be, well, solar's not growing fast enough. But that's not the case either. We're top 10 year after year. I think we've been 5, 6, and 7 the last few years. That's not just Georgia Power. That's also counting the growth from the EMCs. But we really do have a great, robust, and vibrant renewable market, and we've got options on the table right now. We're really not opening up any additional options for customers that they don't already have. We do have a community solar program that's available to residential customers. We've got subscription programs that are available to commercial and industrial customers that allow them to subscribe to the output. Every customer in Georgia Power has the ability to subscribe to a renewable resource. So we're not really adding anything there. One of the points made earlier was that we're going to add the ability for customers to save. And that's true because the retail rates, as I mentioned, collect those costs. Our community solar program is designed such that we don't shift cost. And so we're gonna collect enough cost to pay for the grid. That's why customers will not save money. They'll break even or actually end up spending a few dollars a month. The only way this bill can work and will work is to shift costs and raise costs. And I'll close by pointing to the last part of the bill, starting at line 159 on page 7. And this is the guarantee. And it guarantees savings for customers, but it also guarantees a cost shift. It's a zero-sum game. We have to have those kilowatt hours to collect for all the costs. If we don't get them, somebody else has to. And per this line right here, the line 160, subscribers, the bill credit may not, the fees imposed for subscribers may not exceed the value of the bill credit. That tells you right there, costs are going to be shifted. We're going to be short collecting the cost that we need to pay for the fixed cost of the grid. Solar is extremely important to Georgia Power. Small distributed resources are extremely important to Georgia Power. They're a big part of our long-term energy mix. We want to procure just as many of them as we can. It's just the mechanism that's proposed in this bill is not in the best interest of all Georgia Power customers. We've already got what we need. We've got a competitive RFP process. We've got resources being put on the grid right now. We could leverage that competitive process, get projects in at prices closer to avoided cost, 4 or 5 cents, rather than what we would effectively be paying in this bill, which is retail rates closer to 11 cents or so. With that, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Grubb and I are available for questions.
Thank you. I have a question number 19. Chairman Workheiser.
Thank you, Chairman. If I were to ask you how pH changes with a molten cover versus a steel roller with regard to the viscosity of the ink, would you be able to explain that to me? I didn't think you would. Territorial acts, net metering. This is really a question for the next speaker. I could answer that question because I spent 40 years in the printing business. Most of us have not spent decades in the utility business. So my question for the next speaker is, because of my colleagues have, this is what everybody is saying, I don't think I'm the only stupid one in the room, is from an outsider, we've heard that it's working in other states. So what we're hearing is Georgia Power is afraid of competition. I I know that's not the case because I've had it explained to me. So my question for the next speaker is, will you explain the bill, why this bill is bad, is to a fifth grader? Thank you.
The bill is bad because it shifts costs from participating customers to non-participating customers. These programs work in other states because cost shifting is not a priority. They're okay to shift those costs. Many, if not all, of the other states referenced are deregulated states. And again, I'd like to speak a little bit to our market structure. Georgia's market structure, the way that we're vertically integrated and constructively regulated, is producing the best combination of rates and reliability anywhere in the country. And I study markets pretty significantly. I'll put our reliability up against RTOs. I'll put our solar growth up against just about any state. Again, we're seventh, and that's really not taking into account the total size of the load that we serve. It's working really well. This bill introduces risk. It introduces the potential for cost shifts. It introduces the potential for deregulation, and it really doesn't provide very many more options that are already out there. And we're coming up on an IRP really soon. We are always interested in interacting with the solar community and understanding how we can change our programs to make them work better. We're happy to do that. The changes to the Territorial Act that this bill would require is too big of a risk, and it's too big of a danger to the market structure that we've worked so hard to cultivate here.
Representative Roman.
Thank you. So I'm new, and I'm so sorry for these questions if I step on any toes ahead of time. But how much does it normally cost Georgia Power to maintain the grid on average per year?
Total dollars?
Yes.
I don't have that figure. We could get that figure. I could tell you that for the fixed cost, the transmission and distribution components are about a third of the total cost to serve customers.
Got it. So part of the reason I'm asking for quantitative costs is I don't want to pontificate, but something I'm really, really struggling with is what I'm hearing from your colleagues and from others is that this is a bad bill because it allows private entities to enter the market. Some argue regulated, some argue not regulated. And I'm trying to find some sort of compromise where we can allow more competition in the market, even though the market's already set. Because in my head, the way this looks is the grid is set, who owns the grid is set, there's a treaty that's decided who owns and is responsible for what part of the grid. One question I had is, could there be an opportunity where people can purchase parts of the grid to be responsible for it? I was told no. The other question I had was, if the issue is about cost sharing and shifting cost sharing, how is this any different than any other project that customers have been paying for, like Plant Vogel, like other ones? Why does this not deserve the same kind of investment?
So a couple of things. That's a really good question. Thank you. To maintain the grid, to add new generation, those are things that benefit all customers. All customers benefit from Plant Vogel. All customers benefit from the maintenance of the grid, the upgrading of lines, the improvements that we're making in technology. Those benefits accrue to all customers, and so it's okay for all customers to pay. What we're talking about here are the benefits accruing to a specific customer or customer group. So the individual subscribing customer is the one that's going to get all the benefits at the risk and cost of other customers. So that's the difference. It's to maintain the grid, to maintain reliability, those are costs that should be shared by all customers. To add solar just for a particular customer shouldn't be paid for by other customers.
Let me just try to move us along. Representative Vermont, let me put it like this. If all of a sudden tomorrow we could blink our eyes and everybody could subscribe under this bill, there would be no money to pay for the grid at all. So if there was an ice storm, there would be no bucket truck. That's kind of hyperbolic that 100% of the people couldn't do this all of a sudden. But this doesn't contemplate any revenue from this agreement being left over for the grid. Do you have a follow-up? Yes.
On that. So So why couldn't, as an example, allow these companies to come in and through the PSC negotiate some form of a fee or something that would cover that part of the maintenance that they use? So say, for example, a customer is using, I don't know how many kilowatts, could you maybe charge them a percentage of that to make up for the revenue lost on grid maintenance?
So I think maybe you could try, but what I would tell you is we already have competition for generation. So Georgia Power doesn't just get to go build or buy whatever generation we want. The IRP Act requires us to, through competitive procurements or other parts of the Act, to leverage that to go get generation. So we already have competition for providing these resources. And yeah, we run DG RFPs year after year where projects 6 megawatts and under compete, they're selected, projects are built, and they put the energy to the grid at low cost that benefit all customers. So that part is happening on the generation side already, and that's through PSC approved programs. Additionally, we allow customers to subscribe to those, and that's only on utility scale projects now, but there's maybe some more opportunity there, but that's really one of the really great parts about our construct here is the competitive generation procurement that keeps costs low for all customers.
Thank you. Chairman Camp, did you have a question for the?
Thank you. Well, my question is, do you have any type of program right now that pays individuals for solar?
Yes.
All right. What, do you have any PSC regulation over those particular rates at this point?
The PSC has regulation over all of Georgia Power's solar procurement programs, yes, ma'am.
All right. So let's say you said a kilowatt was 11 cents, correct, approximately?
That's the overall retail average,
okay.
give or take, yes.
All right. So how much does Georgia Power pay individuals who are subscribed?
So Georgia Power's retail rate, and it's measured in kilowatt hours, so that's the energy, so those are the electrons that flow through. Those kilowatt hours are sold at a retail rate, averages 11 cents, and that rate collects for not just the energy, not just the electrons and the fuel, but also the cost of the grid, the plants that have to stay there on backup, the cost of customer service, and all the overhead. All that's built into the retail rate at 11 cents. The wholesale rate is closer to about 4 cents. And that's a really good thing. That means we've done a good job managing our system. Our fuel costs are low, our avoided costs are low. And so that difference in what we can generate power for and then what it's sold for to customers, that's what pays for the rest of the expense of running the business, maintaining the grid.
All right. So it's approximately 4 cents. Does the PSC require any additional funds to any of your ratepayers?
From those purchases, we purchase from through PPAs, and a lot of times we purchase through these competitive RFPs at rates below avoided cost.
All right. Well, I guess where I was going with this, I was told by someone that works for Georgia Power that there is a community solar program. Is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
correct? And you pay 3 cents. That's what the generated from the home to Georgia Power. That's what they're paid approximately. Is that correct?
It's 4 cents now.
It's
It
4
has been
cents.
closer to 3 in the
And
past.
the
Yes,
Public Service Commission pays an additional 4 cents. Is that correct?
That's correct. That was
So the
approved.
Public Service Commission is already regulating, taking into account what the grid is, correct? And the maintenance and all those things? That's how they derive that number, correct?
That's not to my knowledge.
You're talking about the 4 cent adder?
Yes.
No, I
Why
don't think that
why
was
would they
based
add
on
4 cents on?
Yeah, I think that was a policy decision made from the bench in the last rate case. It was a contested issue in the rate case, and that was a decision from the bench, from the Public Service Commission, to add those 4 cents.
So the Public Service Commission has essentially determined some fees that would be required to keep the grid going and all those things, correct?
Yes, for purchases that are made pursuant to the Territorial Act and the Cogen Act, yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you.
Just a quick question, and we have one more speaker. I just want to go back to the gentleman earlier that talked about the gas deregulation. And I know you guys aren't, that's a sister company. I may not even be a sister company, George, but I don't know how you're made. But isn't it true that even with our deregulated costs now, whether your gas marketer is X, Y, or Z, I won't even give anybody a free commercial here, whether your gas marketer is A, B, or C, on your gas bill, you get a charge from AGL for the distribution system. Isn't that true?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so I just want to get back, that's the grid, that's the grid version of the,
delivery system.
of the gas. So that even in a deregulated market, there's an acknowledgement that there's a grid.
Yeah, to kind of make an analogy. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I was going to move us along. I have a couple more questions, but out of respect, we have a couple more speakers. So I'm going you guys to wind it up. If there, I don't see another question, I'll get with you later.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Stevens and Jeff Pratt, Georgia EMC. Keep in mind, gentlemen, as you come to the podium, you're standing between Chairman Parsons and dinner. No, I'm just kidding. We're here we have the room till 9 a.m.
We certainly won't keep you that long, but Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for allowing us to be here to testify today. Apologize for my voice. I'm 5 days past laryngitis, but I'm not contagious. But my name is Chris Stevens. I'm the president and CEO of Coweta Fate EMC, and today I'm here with Jeff Pratt. Jeff Pratt's the president and CEO of Green Power EMC, which is an organization owned by the 38 Georgia EMCs that procures renewable resources for its members, including solar power. We're here today representing Georgia EMCs to share our perspective on HB 1152. Georgia EMCs serve about 73% of the land mass of our state and about 4.4 million Georgians. We will preface our remarks on this legislation by letting the committee know that Georgia EMCs are not anti-solar. In fact, we have more than 1,500 megawatts of solar energy online today, enough to help power around 250,000 EMC households, and in total, Georgia EMC solar capacity is expected to grow to more than 2,100 megawatts by 2025. And to put that in perspective, Georgia EMCs have produced 1/3 of all the solar developed for electric co-ops nationally. So we're clear leader of solar among electric cooperatives in the United States. Also today, there are 17 EMCs that offer some variety of community solar program for our members, including Coweta Fate EMC. On a statewide basis, over 57% of our members have access to a community solar program from their electric cooperative. Now, as far as our industry views on HB 1152, Georgia EMCs are united in our opposition to its passage. And I'm sure the first thing most of you are questioning is, why would the EMCs be opposed to a bill that we're not written in as written? And that's a great question. And we believe the provisions of HB 1152 would do substantial damage to the structure of Georgia's electric market, and ultimately it would hurt Georgia EMCs and our consumer members across the state. And for solar developers, HB 1152 is the perfect piece of legislation. It allows any independent solar developer to set up as many 30 to 35 acre solar installations as they would like all around the state and get paid in 3 different ways, as we heard. Actually, it's 4. 1, direct sales of electricity to consumers and businesses. 2, they would sell any electricity they didn't sell to the consumers back to the utility. That the utility would be required to buy whether they need it or not. And the renewable energy credits they will retain, they would be able to sell those into the market. And then lastly, 4th is the tax credits that was mentioned. And we believe that the government policy should not put its finger on the scales as this bill does, especially when many Georgia consumers will feel the fallout from this significant market disruption. This bill, there's essentially no way for a solar developer to lose money. And let's remember that according to the solar industry itself, Georgia is already the number 7 state in the nation for solar. And just a few months ago, in testimony on HB 300 from Representative Trey Kelly, solar advocates bragged that this number 7 ranking was achieved without state government-imposed mandates or subsidies. However, HB 1152 is both a mandate and a subsidy. Also, I know many legislators have recently expressed concerns about the proliferation of solar installations and the impact on the availability of prime farmland. If HB 1152 is enacted, this concern will be multiplied, because many out-of-state solar developers will buy or lease thousands of acres of land in central or south Georgia to build these solar installations. HB 1152 requires the unfair pricing, undermines the utility's financial security by requiring utilities to institute yearly net metering. Any net metering of kilowatt-hour sales using any time period other than instantaneous is detrimental to an effective energy market because it ignores the market's price signals. Ultimately, this policy will shift costs to consumers who are not contracted with the solar entity. We believe that the outside voices supporting this bill will eventually push, and I think you heard that earlier, to apply the bill's provisions to EMCs. This will result in a substantial cross-subsidy from our EMC members to customers of these new unregulated solar entities. These solar developers are independent power producers without any obligation to serve anyone. And finally, this bill profoundly undermines the Georgia Territorial Electric Services Act, the cornerstone of Georgia's electric market regulation that has provided for reliable, efficient, and cost-effective retail service since 1973. This act delineates service territories among Georgia Power, the 41 EMCs, and 52 municipal electric providers. HB 1152 weakens the foundational law by permitting unregulated independent solar developers to enter the market. This action disregards the substantially reduces the effectiveness of the Territorial Act. And you may wonder, does the Territorial Act still work for Georgia consumers 50 years after its enactment? And the question I would ask is, I would tell you, yes, it does. And the question I would ask is, do you think Georgia would be named as the #1 state to do business for the past 10 years in a row if there were not an attractive electric market that keeps rates low while maintaining reliability? Georgia's energy market is the envy of our neighbors, and it underpins our great economic success. So I ask you to consider the risk this bill has on this success in order to promote the economic interest of independent and mostly out-of-state solar developers. Jeff and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. And Mr. Pratt, I think it was one of your facilities that I was speaking about earlier when I went down to I don't know if it was the ribbon cutting or the flipping of the switch. I think you had a big switch down there, if I recall. Right. So I enjoyed that. Do we have questions for the gentleman? Questions? No questions. You did a great job. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have one, John? Yes, sir. You hang on. Chairman Carson.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned four revenue streams, 3 from operations, 1 from financing, I think. Could you go through those one by one again?
So the first was the ability that they would be able to sell credits, really in the form of kilowatt hours, to the end consumer who could subscribe.
Well, it would be, to your point, yes, it's a subscription credit, right?
That's right. So they would buy energy that way. Any energy that's not subscribed would be forced back to the utility. They would be required to pay that.
Okay.
And then the solar developer.
I'm just looking at those one by one. So there would be a subscription credit for the power generated by the community solar development.
Yep.
Plus any energy in excess of the off-takers would be sold back to the grid at a rate determined by this legislation and subsequently by the PSC, correct?
Right.
I hear your point about 2 buckets. I kind of see that as one in regard to all the energy going back, some of it going to off-takers, some of it going to the grid. Okay. Thank you. And the next bucket?
Renewable energy credits. So the solar developer, when you generate the energy, you would create renewable energy credits. The solar developer would retain those and sell those into a market for someone who's trying to offset their carbon footprint, per se.
Yes, sir, that's correct. The renewable energy certificates, the regs, but Georgia Power, Southern Company, what have you, would be able to generate those as well. I mean, that's not unique just to community solar, correct?
And the PPAs that we're involved in on the EMC sides, I won't speak for Southern Power, Georgia Power, or Southern Company rather, we, as the purchaser of that energy, receive those renewable energy credits. That is part of the purchase power agreement that we have. And then if we want to sell those into the market under this scenario, the solar developer does not pass that on to the person who's actually consuming the energy or using the energy. They retain it for themselves to sell into the market.
But Georgia Power does practice selling renewable energy certificates.
I can't speak for Georgia Power.
Okay. Oh, yeah, true. And then the last bit is something I know a little bit about in regard to the investment tax credits. Those are the Section 48 credits, correct?
Yes.
And I understand you're with the EMCs, but Georgia Power does benefit from an ITC from the 45U in regard to nuclear production, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I won't speak to there, but yes.
I understand. Yeah, you may be the right. Maybe I need to get with them in regard to those comparisons. Okay, thank you then.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, you got one more.
One more. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quickly, two things. Is it your contention that this bill would indeed put FERC as the regulatory body over such transactions?
So that would be that's a pretty deep question that would take quite a bit of legal, but it's legal analysis. But it appears that you could construe it that way, in my opinion. But we'd have to refer to our legal counsel. It's something we would jump right on if this bill passes, and to try and understand how it would affect our industry.
Because that rate is a retail rate?
Yeah, it's because it effectively uses the grid. It's the retail wheeling aspect of it that it changes how the oversight body that might be subject to jurisdiction for managing that and for regulating that part of the business.
Okay. And just for a point of clarification of something I heard you say, if you could expound on it, you mentioned the word cross-subsidization. How would cross-subsidization play into this piece of legislation?
Essentially, it's cost shifting. As you heard from Georgia Power a little bit ago, this is a net metering bill, and it's going to shift costs between those who are participating and those who are not.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So I promise, last one, Jeff, I'm going to get you back up there. So I was in Texas a few years ago at ERCOT and happened to see there where the wind energy was actually getting bid on the grid at -19, because the credit's $20 for generating it, right? So they were selling it on the grid. They were paying people to take their energy so they could generate the credit and make $1. So in that case, I think what the gentleman, I'm sorry, Mr. Stevens, was saying with you keep the credit, that allows you to, if you're keeping the credit, if you're the generator, you're able then to lower the price to the people you're selling it to. If you're in they're out there in an unregulated market. But what I'm saying here is if they keep the credit and can sell it, they still get a higher than normal. They don't have to bid their energy on the market. They still get the off. You would have to take it. I know it's not geared to you right now. It's geared to Georgia Power. But if it were a place and they were generating sunshine, they were generating electricity from sunshine, and the grid was full of power. It was a cool spring day, but it was sunshiny. It wouldn't be a play. And we're glad we don't have a deregulated market. But the question is, they wouldn't have to bid it down to get you. You'd have to take it at the price you pay all the time, as opposed to being able, if you were doing it, you would go to your lowest avoided cost to get the power for your customers, save an agreement that you had to buy from. Is that true?
Chairman, you're correct. Yes.
Okay, that's correct. Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, we're down to, I want to ask Mr. Bond from the Public Service Commission to come up and bring whomever you'd like with you, or if you want to. They've sent you, sir, up here by yourself. I'm quite sorry for that. They're laughing at you in the back. I just you have no backup, sir. I don't know if you have anything you wanted to share. I think we put you in the passenger seat to go last there for your comments if you have them, and then to answer questions for the subcommittee.
Yeah.
So you
and I have just a few prepared comments, and then if there's questions. I'm Tom Bond. I'm Director of Utilities at the Georgia Public Service Commission. The Commission generally keeps a neutral stance on bills, except for ones that we're putting forward. Commissioners have said in this case that they want to be able to get to neutral, but still have concerns about how the bill is written and what it would do. When first discussed, this bill only included nonprofits, churches, and government entities. As written now, it potentially includes all 2.8 million Georgia Power customers. I've been doing utility regulation since the 1990s, so I was here for telephone deregulation, I was here for natural gas deregulation. When both of those industries were deregulated, Georgia had lots of problems with customer confusion, deceptive business practices, and things like slamming customers. Slamming customers is when door-to-door representatives go to people's houses to solicit sales, or when outbound call centers call up customers unsolicited to make sales and then switch them without their permission. We experienced a lot of that with telephone. We experienced a lot of that with natural gas. We see the possibility of something like that happening here. And so our caution to the legislature would be, if you're going to proceed this route, you want to make sure that you've got rigorous consumer protections, because, like I said, I've been doing this since the 1990s, and it took me a while to try to figure out what this bill was doing. So imagine a customer being approached in their home, do you want to sign up for this? And them trying to understand what it is they're agreeing to and what's going to happen. And that's it for my prepared comments. Yeah.
Now, I think I have a question. I'm going to ask the members if they have one. That strikes me as well, because what I haven't seen in the bill or had heard discussed is what the subscription fee would be. Would that be anything that you would provide input on, the way you read? I mean,
well,
do you feel like you have enough control over that, at the onset and in the future?
Well, the way it's written, the commission would not set the subscription fee. I think the statute says the subscription fee can't exceed certain parameters. Now, that could be one of the places where it gets a little confusing, because every customer's usage is different. Every customer's bill is different. So, when you try to calculate, well, here's how much a customer is going to sell, how much a customer is going to save, or, what the bill actually says, it doesn't say customers will necessarily save money. It tries to say that they won't pay any more than their current bill.
Is there anything in the legislation, as I read it, that, okay, say that the subscription fee talks about that. Is there anything in here that would prevent an administrative fee, a pay, online fee? I mean, I just try to look at all the things that we all have pop up. I mean, for goodness sakes, my bank tried to charge me for depositing a check the other day. I mean, when's the last time you thought they were going to charge you for depositing a check at the bank? I should do that. My former bank tried to charge me for depositing a check. No, I'm serious about that. Is that something that it seems like the fees that are being set in here are all to the protection of I think the solar finance, what are we calling it here? The solar finance agent. It seems like those are the things. Do you see any consumer, you would like to, what I'm hearing from you is to see some more consumer protection? Yeah, clear and, absolutely clear language that no other fees can apply. It currently says on line 159, subscription costs and fees imposed, subscription costs and the fees imposed back on line 96 may not exceed the value of the bill credit. It may not include any upfront or sign-on fees. Well, are there other types of fees that I haven't thought of that, should it at least say, or any other type of fee? That kind of thing. If you look at the consumer protection language, say with the telephone deregulation from, I believe it was 95, and the natural gas deregulation that was, I believe it passed in 97, but then it had to be amended again in 2000 and 2001 and 2002, each time adding more consumer protections, because
we kept discovering new ways that customers weren't understanding what was happening. You know, if you look at the language in those two acts, it goes into great detail about what kind of customer protections exist. You know, in both cases, it specifically says that the commission can certify companies. This doesn't say anything like that. So we had those problems with telephone and natural gas deregulation, even though the commission was certifying those companies. In this case, we don't certify these companies.
Yes, sir. And my last question is on line 75 through 77, and that's the language that says such transactions shall not be considered retail sales of electricity. I mean, what would the commission, do you have anything from a commission's legal standpoint? I mean, to me, this committee, you know, full House representative in the Senate, you know, saying an elephant's not an elephant doesn't make it not an elephant. It would seem to me that we would strike that language and let the words on paper stand for themselves. Either it is, some court is going to look at it, and it is the sale of electricity or it's not, rather than us trying to do a carve out. Do you have a thought on that? Does the commission have a thought on that?
Well, I mean, one thing I think it makes it clear that the commission's not setting that subscription rate when it says it's not, because normally that's what the commission is regulating, is the retail rate of electricity. So I think that reinforces the idea that the commission won't be setting this subscription rate. The statute has a limit on how much the subscription rate would be, but within, at or below that limit, it's not regulated.
But the commission would be setting the rate that was the utility paid back to the generator.
Right. The commission would be setting the credit back.
Okay.
But not the subscription fee.
Okay. All right. Further questions of the gentleman? Do you have anything? Okay. What is that, number 5? Try that.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. I just have an overall statement, and then I do have one question for the commission. In 2021, we created, well, this General Assembly body created the Fulton County Technology and Energy Enhancement Authority. I know that today we've talked, or that energy burden has come up quite a bit today. I just want to read to you a little bit about the Fulton County Technology Energy Enhancement Authority. It was designed to provide specific assistance in improving the technological and energy resources and reducing the energy burden of residents in these pockets. It is the intent of the General Assembly in creating the Fulton Technology and Enhancement Authority to establish an entity of capable identifying, targeting, and alleviating the specific elements relating to the underdevelopment of technological resources and energy burdens which are causing poverty, increased unemployment rates, and statistics comparable to failing school rates and undevelopment in the pockets and development of programs to address them. In this bill, 1152 on lines 27 through 31, in respect to the state's electric utility, in order to provide increased access to solar technologies, is a mechanism that will encourage private investments in solar resources, stimulate economic growth and job creation, promote energy resilience, and help consumers manage their electric bills. I love this. I'm pro-solar, I'm for solar. I'm just not sure if this is just the best way of going about this, but I would hope that Georgia Power and EMCs would be committed to increasing its efforts in reducing energy burden areas in Fulton County and any other areas of concern. And Commissioner, going back to Chairwoman Beth's question about the 4%, and how she explained that, do you concur that that is correct, of how the 4% is derived?
The 4%? You mean the 4 cents?
I'm sorry, 4 cents.
I believe that was referring to the rate that Georgia Power pays when people have rooftop solar and they put extra kilowatt hours that they generate on Georgia Power's system. Georgia Power pays them avoided cost plus 4 cents, and that was a rate set by the commission in 2022.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Chairman Carson.
Thank you. And, sorry, thank you for being here, by the way. This is being deemed a deregulation bill, and I wanted to get your I know you don't speak for the commissioners themselves, but you have a lot of experience, much more than this committee does. When I think of energy generation and what have you, I think of 3 main areas: the investments, and that would be, under this bill, it would be private investment, which does have incentives behind it. And then there would be, second area would be rates, and that is mentioned and given some guidance to the PSC in lines 86 and 87 of the bill. And then obviously permitting and operation. I understand that these installations would still be subject to PSC approval for installation and permitting and so forth. My question is, would you regard this as a deregulation bill? I'm just asking.
It certainly is deregulating some aspects of the electric system, just like the natural gas deregulation bill didn't actually deregulate all of natural gas. We still have AGL rate cases. We still set marketer terms and conditions. We still certify them. But everybody calls it deregulation. With telephone, we still certify telephone companies, even though they're deregulated, and they still file tariffs with us. So it's really a matter of semantics. Certainly, it's not completely deregulated, and none of our utilities have been completely deregulated except for railroad. But it is certainly deregulating some aspects of electric service.
Like what specific aspects?
Well, the rate that the subscription fee that these customers pay would not be set by the commission. Right. It would be, it's capped by the statute, but within that,
it's not set by the PSC.
It's not set by the PSC.
Right. Okay. Is that the only aspect?
I think one of the legislators had asked about large load customers outside of Georgia Power's territory. Presumably, they could now pick Georgia Power and have access to this, where in the past they may have picked an EMC as their provider. So it certainly has ramifications, that it's not a wholesale deregulation, but it's deregulating aspects of the electric industry.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that's the last question we have. Just as a follow-up to that, I mean, the generation portion would be deregulated in that you would not control. Georgia Power brings in a resource plan and thinks X, and then somebody comes in after that's approved and comes in with these, and they have to pick up power from that. Now, again, at the scale we're talking about now, that's not an issue, but if it were coming in larger scale items, it could in fact be an issue, could it not?
That's right. I mean, currently when Georgia Power gets solar from a distributed generation system, and I think Mr. Mallard from Georgia Power talked about that. They've got lots of distributed generation systems throughout the state. All of those have PPAs where the price was set by the commission through a competitive bidding process. That aspect would not be present here, other than you'd have this ability to sell under PURPA if they had excess electricity. But you wouldn't have these PPAs that have obligations to have those kind of things. So that would be a deregulation in a sense of some of the facilities. And again, it's not total deregulation, just like none of our deregulations have been total deregulations.
Thank you very much. No further questions. That's all the speakers we have. Folks have been here for a second. If anyone would like that, Mr. Chairman, you want to speak before I go back to the author to close, or? Yes, Chair Lee Camp. You can close from your seat if you'd like. Press your button. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the committee for being patient in this 2.5-hour meeting discussing this. I think it was good to hear from all of the shareholders involved in this as well, and there certainly are points that it does seem like we need to go back. Definitely to the Public Service Commission mentioned some things that we probably do need to go in there and fine tune before this bill does come before a full committee hearing. But my purpose in being involved in this is not because I just love energy. It's because there are ratepayers back home, as Representative Thomas alluded to, that are really in need of some sort of relief. And this was, to me, an awesome way to potentially provide solar in our state, which we're in a very sunny state, and also potential for a mechanism for ratepayers, if they so choose, to be a part of, to offset some of the cost of their electricity. Certainly, we do not want to destroy the Territorial Act, of course not, but this is a very small segment. This is not going to overtake Georgia Power or the EMCs. I'm a member of both. Well, I'm a customer of Georgia Power, and I'm a member of 2 different EMCs. So certainly my intention is never to hurt them in any way. But on the flip side of it, these very small solar facilities, to me, are a lot more palatable than the 200 acres we see in various places throughout our state that are, unfortunately, taking farmland out of production, which I think all of us would agree is probably not the best thing, since we all like to eat coming upon dinner time now. I do appreciate the committee's indulgence in allowing us to have a lot of robust conversation and discussion on this, and I certainly look forward to us having some discussions with some stakeholders, and hopefully we could bring back a stronger bill.
Thank you, Chair Lady Camp. Chairman Parsons.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Chairman Martin, for chairing this long hearing, and for the members who've come here and stayed the whole time. This is fantastic. A very good turnout. Of course, everybody from the public that's come. The only thing I wanted to say is that at this point, Chairman Martin, if you and Chairman Camp would kind of talk together, and I kind of leave it to you guys what you want to do next as far as the next step. But I did want to say that we won't be doing anything with this tomorrow in our regular meeting at 3 o'clock. And I want to say now, y'all have had a long meeting today. Probably could very well be a long meeting tomorrow. It's going to be a meeting regarding regulation, and some people in parts of the state want their water systems to be regulated, and there's a lot of interest in it. I know I've got almost 200 emails, and a lot of them are not form emails either. So we will be meeting tomorrow at 3, and we won't be addressing this. We'll leave it up to you all to what the next step in that's going to be. But I think it was a really good hearing, and I appreciate all the presentations, the questions, and that have been asked. Very good questions. Thank you, Chairman Martin. Appreciate it.
I want to thank as well the committee's time, and I don't know if it's a motion, but I would like this committee to hold this bill for now. I would like to get, if it's okay with the chair and the full committee chair, I would like to get with Georgia Power in regard to, I understand there was some data in regard to cost shifting and some of the base cases and so forth in regard to how that works, and I'd like to understand that mechanics, particularly given my background. So if there's a motion to adjourn the subcommittee, I would make that motion so we can further discuss this offline.
You're not recognized for that purpose at this time, because I'm just going to say this. Yes, we'll get with Chairman Camp as he's directed. I agree with Chairman Carson that data is to be had. So we will be doing that, and I'll reach out to those. And just to make it simple, we'll adjourn without objection. If there's no objection, we're adjourned. Same thing.